Hello, 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 and good evening. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. We will give everybody a few minutes to get on board with the live stream here. Matter of fact, I'm pulling over the live studio here to get this party started. So, all the good stuff that goes along with it. So yeah, good stuff. What's up, Brendan? How you doing, man? Nice of you to show up. Oh, the viewers are popping right up today. That's always good to see. So we'll get started here in just a few minutes. Let everybody get connected and attached to the stream. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback, feel free to throw any of that stuff into especially the concerns. Don't bother telling me about it. Just kidding, haha. If you guys have any questions, comments, feedback, that type of stuff, feel free to put it in the chat. I will see everything and I will comment it out. I will, everything here is public, so just don't say anything you don't want anybody else knowing. So, all that good stuff that goes along with it. So we'll get started here probably 4 after or so, once everybody is squared away and stuff like that. So today we're going to be chatting about internet edge, high availability, failover designs, and all that good stuff. What did I say? We're going to be doing internet edge design, failover scenarios, high availability. Because as of lately, that's what a lot of the no data. Why does it say no data? That's weird. Anyway, that's what a lot of folks seem to be struggling with lately. So, for anybody that has been living under a rock for the past couple of weeks, this is the Encore and NRC topology that I'm showing you here, and I'll be doing a quick little demo just to walk you guys through some concepts and stuff like that, because that seems to be the thing that everybody wants to see anyway. So we'll go through with all that good stuff. So we'll wait till about 4 after, and then we'll actually get down to brass tacks. And if you guys have any specific things that you want to dive into, if there's a particular topic that you'd like me to cover, or a technology that you'd like to chat about, feel free to put that in the chat, and I will try to answer your question to the best of my ability, and all that good stuff that goes with it. So yeah, good stuff. What was the best resource you used when studying for your CCNP? Udemy, INE? Did you enjoy working for INE, making your own labs? Any thoughts? Good question. So, my resources were pretty targeted at the time. Excuse me. Back then I started with CBT Nuggets for my CCNA, and then I understood I understood the question. Did you enjoy working for INE? I figured that's what you meant. So yeah, I spent some time with CBT Nuggets there for a while, and then I got to a certain point where, after I failed a route back when it was route switch and T-shoot, when I failed, I was frustrated because I didn't really know where else to look, and INE had been the recommendation to me from somebody that had taken their CCIE, and so I was just like, there was a big shift in the style of learning that INE offered that CBT Nuggets just didn't. A much deeper dive into the technologies, so and much more direct. for all the instructors, not just Brian. But so anyway, yeah, it was CBT Nuggets. Then I failed route, and then I came back, and then I was just like, okay, I have to get serious about this, and so I went down the INE route for the remainder of it. So I watched all of their CCNP content, and then did a very large chunk of CCIE version 3, version 4, whatever it was. Because there was recordings done for V4 or CCIE version 4, and then Brian came back and like re-recorded it. So I watched both of them, and I had to be honest with you, the stuff that Brian did was better. So he's well versed in that type of stuff. So INE for probably the last CCNP, all of it, CCIE 90%, and then a smattering of other vendors out there that I had access to, so that I could be more well-rounded, specifically for like labs when I was getting to the point where I was taking the lab. So I did enjoy working for them. I kind of miss it, to be honest with you. There's some aspects of working with them that was cool, but at the end of the day, it was their target audience maybe. I've had a lot of people come to me and tell me that they're not as thorough as they used to be. And I don't watch INE content very much anymore because a lot of the stuff that I'm studying, they don't have a lot of deep coverage for. So if they did, that'd be a different story. I probably would be spending more time in there, but they don't have the coverage that I'm looking for the technologies that I'm working with. So it's unfortunate. Or the instructor that they have delivering the content, no disrespect to the person delivering, and I'm not going to say who, but there's sometimes delivery of the material it doesn't click with the viewer. And I am always not that the instructor's bad, but just the delivery style just doesn't work for me. So I need to be engaged with whoever I'm learning with, and I'm sure all of you can relate to that as well. You get some people just don't relate with me, and that's fine. I'm more than happy to say pound sand if you go do your thing. Like most people are, they're coming to me for training. They like my training style, so I try to be upfront and straightforward on all that type of stuff and give you stuff that's actually useful. So I'm finding that I'm having to leverage multiple resources nowadays. So Udemy, Pluralsight, Orhan, Ergon, Micronics. I have access to INE through a business account through my job. So if there's specific stuff that I have to go train on, I go. But at the end of the day, it's just, you have to find a training platform or an instructor that clicks with you. That's really what it comes down to. So, and yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Okay, person I've been watching, Raymond Lacoste from Stormwind. I love his style. I think Stormwind is underrated. Yeah, actually, funny story. Stormwind, this has got to be 5 years ago. 2015. Yeah, so it's 5 years ago almost. Coming close to that. I took the lab for service provider in the end of 2019, and Stormwind tried to recruit me to do some of their service provider content, and at the end of the day, it didn't work out between us because the company I was working for at the time had a monopoly on me. They wouldn't allow me to do any type of technical training for anybody else, even though the content that I wanted to cover, the company I worked for had zero interest in me covering. So I said, well, what difference does it make then? Like, if you're not going to let me cover the topics that I want to cover because that's what I enjoy doing, and if you have a passion for something or you really enjoy working with it, it makes more sense to me to let the person cover it. But if you have no interest in letting me cover those materials or those topics, why won't you let me just go out and do something on my side and make a little bit of money on the side? But anyway, that long story short, that never worked out. And there's a guy out there, Russell something or other. I can't remember his name. I'd have to go look it up. But he and I have had some conversations about doing some training for service provider on the Stormwind platform. But solid platform. I learned a lot about multicast from Stormwind, actually. Good stuff. Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, I'm at the point now where I'm kind of on doing my own thing. I don't see myself working for anybody else. I wouldn't be against doing a I'm not even sure how you would categorize it. I wouldn't mind doing some training for somebody else, but I don't want any company taking the rights to any of the material that I create, and then, it's just, to me, but no company's going to let me create content, like the format of the video that I'm doing right now. You know how I have you can see me, you can see my desktop, you see the background. I like the way that I do this training delivery. It works for me. But I don't see any training company being okay with this on multiple platforms. So, but yeah, it's maybe one day. I don't know. But I'm pretty comfortable with the way that everything's rolling out right now. Rob, what's your take on ACI? Would it be better to learn VXLAN EVPN instead for job market? That's a good question. So the way that I would answer that question is actually, let me flip over here so we have a visual of what you actually are talking about. So this is another topology that I'm working on, kind of a reworking the real world networking topology. Instead of just one big topology, it'll be multiple iterations of it. It's kind of the way I'm thinking about going about it. So what Tyler's talking about is you have your spines. Actually, let me make this a little bit bigger. So you have your spines up here, and you have your leaf switches down here, which means that it is a spine leaf topology, also referred to a Kloss fabric by Charles Kloss, who's the guy that, whose brainchild this was. My opinion on that is, before you can understand how to automate something, you need to know how to understand, or you need to understand how the things that it orchestrates work. So ACI is an orchestration of sorts, where it GUIifies through. So you go into a GUI and then you click through a bunch of menus, you glue a bunch of logic together through those menus, and then you deploy to your fabric. Well, my opinion is you need to first understand how VXLAN works as, it's supposed to be an N, and then EVPN. They're technically two separate things. VXLAN is the data plane, EVPN is the control plane. So you need to understand how VXLAN and EVPN work, both separately and together. And then if you understand how that works and how there are tunnels built, well, actually I shouldn't direct to that one, how there are tunnels built, VXLAN tunnels built between you and everybody else, right? It's just a basic example of how that comes into play. Let me put another, even though technically it's the same VTEP. So you have all this communication going back and forth. You should really understand how VXLAN EVPN works before you start diving into either Nexus Dashboard Fabric Controller or ACI. They're basically conceptually the same thing in a matter of speaking. They're both platforms that you would log into and deploy VXLAN fabrics. ACI has a little bit more dependencies to it. You've got the APIC, you've got your leaf switches, discovery, and all that type of stuff. NDFC also has a discovery process that you have to go through, and then you have to bring the switches in, push some config, they reboot, you push your VLANs, your VRFs, your routing, all of your external connectivity. It can do a lot of the same things ACI does, except for ACI takes it a few steps further. It gives you some analytics that Nexus Dashboard won't, but they often will integrate with each other through Intersight and Insights. So there's a lot of capabilities that NDFC and ACI work together on. But regardless of where you start, this right here is your number one first step. You have to understand how VXLAN as a data plane and then EVPN, I'm going to put this as 1.5, work together. and then you could use NDFC and ACI to automate the process, and then deploy specific things over and over and over again. So that's where that comes into play. But that's how I would correlate it. But you need to understand how VXLAN and EVPN work before you start trying to deploy through NDFC or ACI. That's my opinion on it. Can you quickly go over your pricing for the workbooks? Is it $50 a month? No. So right now, as today, the way that the pricing works is if you buy the enterprise workbook, it's a single $50 charge. So that's how much the workbook costs. So I was kind of a moron when I built the pricing structure for it. I didn't realize that I had the subscription model attached to it. So I tell everybody that if you buy the workbook, as soon as you start your membership, cancel it, so that you only get charged once, because you buy the workbook once, it's yours for life. And then if you want, as time goes on and there's new additions to it and things like that, you'll get those updates over time. Right now I'm busy developing workbooks, and the enterprise workbook hasn't had any really major updates. I haven't had any reason to really update it yet. I've been keeping an eye on the blueprint. So it's $50. It's a one-time charge, and that'll be how it goes. What I am planning on doing is leveraging Patreon a little bit more consistently in the future, as more workbooks are developed for Encore and RC, for whether it's service provider or security or stuff like that. My goal is to take. You can't see my whiteboard that's past the webcam, but I have a ton of topics that I plan on going through and developing workbooks for. And so my intention, is to go through and cover a lot of different platforms and a lot of different topics, put them into workbook form, and then I want to create a all access pass through Patreon, where instead of buying each book individually at $50 a head, or at $50 per workbook, I would create just a pricing model of like $25 a month, and then you would get access to anything that I would produce. And that would include videos that go along with the workbooks themselves, so on and so forth. So that's kind of my go forward plan. I was thinking about building a website and having like a dedicated web page per workbook topic. And then, you have the workbook lab, and then the solution that would go along with that. So I'm trying to keep things relatively inexpensive, because I don't believe in, even though the workbook is probably worth more than that, I feel like I would rather it be at a lower price point and more people buy it and take advantage of it and leverage what it's there for. It's meant to help you guys. I'm not trying to get rich off this. But at the end of the day, there's enough of you out there that follow me that I'm actually doing pretty well on it financially. So I'm not able to replace my full-time job, obviously, but it's one of those things where it's definitely the payback has been coming in, and more people are buying the book. So the books will always be $50 a pop unless there's a specific reason it needs to be lower or higher. What's up, Kaleem? How you doing, buddy? So that's kind of the pricing structure I see with it. To me, that's what makes the most sense. I'm not like $200 for a book just seems a little obscene to me, depending for what I'm producing. $50 seems like a pretty fair price. But I think every book I'm going to create is going to cost $50. It seems like a fair price for just about anything, and then $25 a month for an all access pass and for the workbooks and the videos that go along with them. So it'll give me several years worth of content to go create. Anyway, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and shift gears a little bit now that I've answered some of the questions in the chat. If you guys have questions, or if you just want to chit-chat about whatever, you've seen this or you've seen that or whatever, I don't care. If you guys want to just throw something in the chat, we can have a conversation about it and go from there. So one of the comments that was left, I'm going to go ahead and clear the screen. One of the comments that was left, and it's a public comment, so I'm going to go ahead and let me pull up YouTube Studio again. So there's a couple of things that I need to clarify. So I'm going to go do kind of a high level on how HSRP works, because that seems to be a sticking point. And I want to talk a little bit about internet edge design, because it's something that I feel like some folks are either they don't have experience with it, they've never done it, that type of stuff. So I want to kind of dig into the details a little bit about how that works. So what I'm going to do is bring this over, and we're going to talk a little bit about how this comes into play. So right here. So let me just kind of go over this, and I'm not picking on this person. I'm sure you've seen me record videos answering the questions and things like that. This isn't a pick on response. This is a clarification and to try to educate. So at least that's my intention anyway. So, what he's trying to do here is try to make a pseudo SD-WAN. So typically what SD-WAN is going to do across just about every platform or every vendor's implementation of SD-WAN is there's going to be a minimum of 2 or 3 sites, and all 3 of those sites, we'll say 3 for simplicity, all 3 of those sites are going to form IPsec VPNs with each other for encrypted transport between the sites. There's going to be route propagation, whether or however they do that, whether it's Viptela, Velo, Fortinet, Meraki, there's always going to be some sort of route propagation over the VPN solution that's put into play. The cool thing about it is the IPsec VPNs that are spun up between the sites, that is all 100% orchestrated. Now, there are people like myself and a lot of you that know how all that stuff works and could stand the VPNs up yourself, but it'd be a very manual process. The whole point of going through the orchestration of SD-WAN is to eliminate that complexity of having to spin up VPNs manually every time you get a new site and things like that. Or you go to the cloud and you've got virtual devices up in the cloud that you're trying to set up connectivity to. So you've got that. So to answer a question, have you come across any good EVPN resources except the Ping Factory course, trying to diversify the resources I have? I haven't come across anything outside of Ping Factory for segment routing. EVPN wise, I've been using Orhan Ergun a lot lately. He's got some really good content for service provider that I've been going through lately. So that's basically where I've been kind of hanging out for the past couple weeks. Actually, I just finished the segment routing course from Ping Factory on Udemy. It was really, really good. Overdue does a really good job of breaking the technologies down, and now I need to spin up a lab and actually walk through the config step by step with him. So what JK is talking about here is trying to take IPSLA, the operation that the IPSLA is, and trying to pseudo SD-WAN-ize a router, and that's really not going to work. So IPSLA's job, in a nutshell, in most cases, just about every one of the designs I've ever implemented, is to do an ICMP echo. So we're going to send a ping outbound to some address. You're going to set up an echo, you're going to set up a ping to a specific IP address, and you're going to send this, say, every 5 seconds, and if you miss 4 pings, for example, over the course of 20 seconds, you're going to consider this guy down. So if it misses, then it's going to show up as IPSLA failed or down. And if the SLA instance fails, which will be attached to a tracking object, the tracker will go down, and then whatever the tracker is attached to will also go down, whether that's a static route, HSRP, your VPC if you're on a Nexus 9K, stuff like that. So what he's trying to do, or what he's asking here, is really not feasible. Now, there might be specifics that you might be able to pull out if you were to look at the documentation and kind of read through it, but at least my level of knowledge when it comes to IPSLA, you really can't do this. It's not meant for it. The SLA itself, the service level agreement, is meant to generate synthetic traffic. Synthetic meaning that if you want to do a ping test, or if you want to send packets over the network that are, say, that's supposed to be a G, G711 ULAW, which is a voice over IP codec for real-time voice, then you could basically send synthetic traffic over the wire as an IPSLA probe or as an IPSLA packet. And what's going to end up happening is that's going to allow you to test your voice quality and other stuff like that. So if you have, you'll be able to see the traffic flow through the network, and you'll be able to see things like your QoS markings get triggered if you're doing a Wireshark or a span on that type of stuff. That's really what that's meant for in those specifics. There's a bunch of other variables that are out there. You can do the same thing with DNS. There's some UDP stuff that's out there. But that's essentially what IPSLA's job is to do. So if we were to take this into a real world scenario, something I just did not too long ago, like a week or two ago for a customer, I explained how this worked because they didn't understand how this process worked. Let me switch my color over here to red. Let's, for example, say that I1-2 has a loopback address of 2.2.2.2. Well, what the IPSLA's job is to do is to ping 2.2.2.2. And what will end up happening is E1 and E2 are both on the same LAN segment, meaning this connection right here, gig 2 and gig 3, are inside of VLAN, that's supposed to be a V, VLAN 12, for example. And what ends up happening is because they're on the same LAN segment, say 11 and 12, for example, they're able to talk to each other back and forth via HSRP. So you have HSRP set up between the edge routers, and they are going back and forth doing their thing. And then let's say the .1 is over here, and E1, your edge 1, is the VIP. So the VIP and the VMAC are sitting on E1. You're doing NAT on both interfaces, so you're natting traffic as it goes outbound. Now typically what you're going to do is whatever configuration you have on E1, you're going to replicate that onto E2. So in the event that there's a failure, you can fail over. Now you're going to have a ping IPSLA that's pinging 2.2.2.2, and you're going to have a tracking object. You're going to track IPSLA instance 1, so track 1 for short. And what's going to end up happening is you're going to go underneath your HSRP config on both devices, specifically E1, if you want to fail back. You're going to go underneath here and you're going to say HSRP 12 track 1, for example. I don't know, I think that's pretty close to the actual syntax. So HSRP 12 track 1. And what's going to happen is if IPSLA can't ping this IP address anymore, the ping starts to fail, tracking fails. If tracking fails, you're going to have this set up to where you're going to decrement a certain priority value away from E1. Let's say this guy's set to 120. Well, if you decrement 30 from this guy and E2's priority is 100, if you drop 30 from 120, you're down to 90, and so the VIP is going to move over here to E2. E2 is now going to become your primary device, and so D6, distribution 6, isn't going to send the traffic here anymore. He's now going to send the traffic over to here. So that means all your NAT config needs to be configured on E2 as well. So when you start sending traffic out to the internet, it's going to go to E2 instead of E1 and then get to where it's got to go. And that's how, if you were doing a high availability internet edge design, that's what you would want to do. Is this SD-WAN? No, it is not. Does it act like SD-WAN in some cases? Yes, it does. However, SD-WAN's job isn't to ping a specific IP address out on the internet. It can do that, but typically speaking, you're looking at link degradation. How much utilization is on this link? Am I looking at 60% utilization, 70, 80? How much delay is on the link? How much latency am I seeing? Those are the things that SD-WAN is going to be taking a look at from a probing perspective. Because what you want to be able to do is any type of latency sensitive traffic that is potentially riding over your internet circuit, instead of sending it over that internet circuit now, you might be able to fail it over to another circuit. Now, the way that I have this wired is not specifically set up for SD-WAN. This is not an SD-WAN specific course either for this topology. This is meant for an RC, and an RC doesn't have any SD-WAN on it. if this was an SD-WAN topology, I would have links set up to these routers like so, and these would be SD-WAN endpoints and set up in high availability, so that there would be, you'd have an alternative path, right? You'd always have an extra, another path to go outside of. But since this isn't set up for SD-WAN, it's not set up for that. So how hard would this be to set up? It wouldn't be hard at all to set up. I don't have the topology in a position really where I can demo that, but the idea would be to go through and set up the IP SLA first. So this would be your first thing to do. Then you set up your tracking to call the SLA instance. Once you call the SLA instance from the track, then you would take it and you would attach the track to HSRP. And then you'd be able to fail over if there's a scenario in order for you that would trigger SLA to fail. The tracking would fail, therefore you would fail over. So how common is this? Very common. I can't tell you how many times I've used this exact same design and implementation in real life. And it doesn't, can you have more than one circuit? Yes. If you have, let's say for example, we have ISP2 sitting, or ISP3 hanging out here. You've got some coax connection. Let's say this circuit right here is fiber. Well, you can bring a fiber connection in, terminate on E1, but then you have Internet 3 that plugs into E1 as well, and it's a cable modem. Or a 5G or a 4G wireless backup. That would work too. You would want it as backup because it's not as, doesn't have the speed that a fiber circuit would have. So these are all things that you could totally take advantage of and do if you wanted to take that into consideration. So these are just some of the things that really need to be thought out when you're looking at internet edge design in terms of the capabilities that you might need to do. So that is why you need to have that. Now, another thing that I wanted to make mention of is how HSRP does its thing, because that's, if you already know that, great. Then this is just going to be high level review for you. So we're going to say that we have R1, we have R2, and we have some sort of aggregation device. Let's just say switch 1. Well, switch 1 and R2 and switch 1, R1 and R2 are all going to be connected to each other, and then R1 and R2 are going to be on the same VLAN. Let's just going to say VLAN 12. Well, and the reason why they need to be on the same VLAN is because they're going to be exchanging hellos via UDP port 1985 on the same subnet. Now, it doesn't matter if we're dealing with the physical interface. You know, you go to gig0/1 and you type in the IP address, or if you're dealing with the sub interface, it doesn't matter. As long as you end up getting the communication going back and forth inside the same subnet, it doesn't matter. So we'll say, for example, here we're dealing with 10.1.2.0/29. Does switch 1 need to participate in anything? No, it doesn't. So switch 1 is just a transparent device that is needed in order to allow R1 and R2 to send hellos back and forth. Now, by default, HSRP has 3 3-second hellos, and then in a fourth, basically a 1-second interval. So you're going to send hellos every 3 seconds for 3 intervals, and then if that fails, you're going to go to a fourth 1-second interval, and then if you're still not getting anything back, you're going to declare your neighbor down. So let's say, for instance, this guy has the VIP. He's got the virtual IP address. This IP address is configured on both devices. We're going to say this is let's say this is .3, this is .2, the physical interface or whatever interface that you're configuring on the router that's going to be unique on the subnet, and then let's say the VIP is .1. But R1, based off priority of say 120 and a 100 over here, that's going to be how they're going to determine who's who. So higher priority always wins. So in the event that you have something northbound of R2 and R1 happen, so again, you can do an SLA to say Google, and then you can do a track, SLA1, and then you can do a track 1, which is the SLA, and then you can associate that to your HSRP 1 or HSRP 12, and then go about your day. Now, if that's a little bit different So the UDP hellos back and forth between R1 and R2 is a separate scenario of failover than the SLA instance fails to ping Google. And the tracking object takes the priority down from 120 minus 30 down to 90. And then so therefore you switch over here to R2. That's a different failure scenario than R1 failing over to R2 because they can't communicate with each other. Well, let's say, for example, that R1 it loses power. That's a very real scenario. I've seen it happen firsthand. Or there's some sort of one other scenario that I've seen is where there's a software issue on the device, and I actually funny enough on that one, there was a customer that I had traveled down to Nashville for. We were on site doing the cutover for them Saturday morning about 9:30 in the morning. We're looking at the config and trying to get things to fail over the way that we needed them to, but what ended up happening was the one router, it wasn't forming an HSRP peering, if you will. So they didn't see each other, and the router that we wanted to be the primary wasn't becoming the primary. So when we debugged it, there was an error that popped up with like some weird hex code, and so I said, is any traffic going through there right now? And he goes, well, not right now. He's like, I said, just reboot it. And I was like, if that doesn't fix it, we'll have to call TAC. And he's just like, okay. So he rebooted the router. 10 minutes later, it was back online, and then the issue resolved itself. Sometimes there's software level issues. But if R1 was to have some sort of power issue, or far less likely in my experience, the SFP or the Ethernet cable were to go bad or to stop sending traffic, that would be another scenario. I've seen out of link issues versus node issues, I far more see node issues being a problem than I do see link issues. So, but not to say that link issues couldn't be a potential issue. So, it's a much smaller amount of problems versus node issues. So, what would end up happening is if R1 and R2 aren't seeing each other, UDP hellos are lost. No different than OSPF or EIGRP. So except for they don't use UDP, they use their own IP protocol. So RIP would be the other one for that because they use a UDP port 520. So in that particular scenario, then if you lose the VIP between R1 and R2, R1 stops responding to the UDP hellos from R2 after a certain period of time. R2 is going to declare R1 down, and then he'll become the VIP and go about its way that way. So that's one of the things that I wanted to also cover, because it seems to be one of those things where if you're not careful with it, it can cause problems. I have seen people configure access lists in between the routers and not take into account everything. Specifically, they've blocked UDP specific ports. They end up blocking HSRP by accident, and before you know it, and now HSRP is broken, or failover is not working the way they expect it to. So these things do come into play and need to be considered when you're looking at high availability type stuff. So that's basically how that would come into play. So based off what I've covered so far, is there any questions for those of you that are still here and watching? Does that make sense? Clear as mud? Do you have any questions on that type of stuff? Because that's pretty much what I wanted to cover this evening in today's session. But if there's anything anybody wants me to discuss further or what have you, we can dive into that. But that's essentially where I wanted to leave it, in case anybody has anything else that they wanted to chat about. Well, this live stream is like live. Like I just took a sip and I'm already seeing it pop up. Good stuff. No? Okay. Well, yeah, I figured I'd give it, 30 to 45 seconds for if anybody had anything So there's that. Okay, cool. Well, since nobody has anything on that, that's fine. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about when you're studying for an exam, how far do you take your studies? Because that was something I talked about Friday on my coaching session, and that seems to be a common theme that a lot of people seem to want to chat about. What's up, Irfan? Yeah, I find HSRP used a lot in the real world. A lot of people use it all over the place. So it's definitely something that I would suggest if you don't already have a solid understanding, something you would definitely want to know about. You know, it's funny you say legacy technology. It is considered a legacy technology because of the fact that it's been used forever. But and the reason why it's going to be looked like that is because a lot of your newer models of devices, especially SD-WAN on the edge, you know, a lot of customers are going to move away from using HSRP or VRP in this type of placement. They're going to move over to more of a chassis aggregated methodology where two devices are put into HA with each other, and one of those devices is active or the other one is standby, but you're going to have cabling to both of them, and they're going to share the IP addresses. So you're going to see a lot more of that go away. As a matter of fact, if I come down here and I look at the way that I've got this wired here, this is one of the newly updated real world networking topologies that I'm working on right now, where you've got Palo 45 and 46 that are going to be HA together, but you're going to have the active and you're going to have the standby, and you're going to have a control plane synchronization, or I should say state synchronization between the firewall setup, and you're going to be in a position where if this guy goes down, this guy's going to take over for it, but the IP addressing needs to mimic where it's sitting, and then you'll have the high availability set up like this. This is the direction a lot of SD-WAN providers are going to go, because Viptela supports VRRP. I haven't tested anybody else's SD-WAN platform, so that's one of those things that I definitely need to go play with one of these days. I do have a list of topics to go over, Fortinet being one of them with SD-WAN. I think Palo, you need a dedicated license for it, but and I don't work with Palo other than whatever the customers got deployed. So, but yeah, you're right. It is considered a legacy technology, but it's not going to be pulled out of the campus LAN. I mean, that's not going to go away, especially if we get bigger customers that have dedicated, well, I don't care who the vendor is, Juniper, Aruba, they all support some sort of gateway redundancy protocol like VRRP, and that's going to stay in place. So when you get up to, I don't have it cabled yet, but you'll get into scenarios like this over here, where you're going to have your two distribution switches. This will be where your layer 3 gateways sit for all of your subnets for this particular block. Well, access switch 34 will connect to 26 and to 27, and these guys will run, whether it's HSRP or VRRP, at the LAN level, and then they'll pass their traffic up to the cores and then go about their day. But, you're not wrong in your where you're reading. It's just you're not going to see it be as commonplace as it used to be. But it's still possible. So this is similar to what I did for a customer a long time ago, where these Palos were in HA. We had an active and we have a standby. Then we have a pair of switches in a stack that are doing HSRP between these edge routers. These edge routers have a default route from each internet provider. And then we have a failover scenario in place to where if this router goes down or there's a problem with the internet connectivity, it's going to fail over to the other provider. HSRP is used in this particular case. So design-wise, it'll depend on the complexity that the customer wants to implement. So, but I still recommend you know it whether you are going to use it or not. It's still better to know how it works and how to configure it than it is to just say, well, I read some blog article somewhere that somebody said that it was a legacy technology, and I don't focus on anything legacy. I only focus on next generation technologies. Well, I wouldn't recommend that. I'd still learn it just because of the fact that it's worth knowing. So there's that. Now I had a question for all of you guys. I know there's 10 of you watching right now. So this is what I have currently for the Encore and NRC workbook. It's still a work in progress. So the question I have for you guys is, do you want to see it set up in a manner that is still task solution style, where you're prompted with a scenario, a task that says, go configure this particular technology or description of this particular technology or feature in this particular device? Do you guys want to see it like that, where you're like challenged to think about it? Or would you rather it be, here's all the config that you would need to do in order to get a particular topology working? So I'll bring you back over here to the topology so you can see what I'm talking about. Where'd it go? Right there. So for example, if we're looking at medium site 1, let me bring this over so you guys can see what I'm talking about. We have medium site 1, and I have a task that tells that, or I have configuration here in the book that says configure VLAN X on access ports or on access switches A9, A10, D10, and D11. And then, go through and configure all these ports as trunks. Which way would you guys prefer to see it? More of a task solution, like the enterprise workbook is written, or would you rather see it just copy and paste the config out of the medium site specifics, the topics that we're going to be covering, and then the troubleshooting is here's the problem that's being seen, go figure out how to fix it? Which way would you guys prefer written? And I'm actually expecting both ways to be coming in, so it's going to be one of those things where I have to do like the weights and measures type of thing. I'm just curious to know which way you guys want to see it. And I'm probably going to put a video out there about it. It's going to be a quick one, just to get some feedback as to which way you guys want me to go about doing it. Task and solution, or just copy and paste the config in for deployment? I have a feeling you guys are going to go task and solution, but I'm just curious. Don't be shy about throwing in the chat. So Irfan, you want me to do task and solution? Okay. Configure XYZ here and then, okay. That's what I figured people are going to go with, because it gives you more, going to make you think about it, which is fine. I've got no problem looking at it that way. I'm just curious. So anybody else got an opinion on that? Would you rather do task and solution, where you're told to go configure XYZ, and then it's up to you to figure out how to do it, and there's a solution that goes along with that? Or would you want to just see the config laid out like it is right now and then paste it into the devices to get it working? And then the troubleshooting section will be, because the way I'm going to do this is you'll have initial configuration, which is all the layer 3 connectivity, will be done ahead of time. You'll paste that in out of the gate, and then deployment wise, you'll be responsible for getting everything working. And then the troubleshooting section will have 25, 30, 40 troubleshooting tickets that you'll have to walk through and figure out how to solve based off of what's going on. So if you have an opinion, put option 1 is task and solution, and option 2 is copy paste. So just throw that in the chat if you have an opinion on which way you want to go. So with that ask out there, I'll do a video on it too. It'll be pretty short. I'll probably put it together as a YouTube short. and then you guys can comment which way you guys want to see it. To me, it doesn't matter one way or the other. Copy paste would be faster for me, and I'd be able to get it out quicker. But task and solution would take a little bit longer for me to do, but it would probably give you more, be a bit more challenging out of the gate. So, all right. With that being said, we have 10 minutes left in the hour until we hit 8 o'clock Central Time. So if there's anything you guys want to chat about, or guys have a question on something, or whatever, you just chat about recent events. You can do that too in the chat, and I'll provide my 2 cents worth. So that's pretty much what I got going on for the rest of the day. So if not, we can. I'm sure I'll come up with something. Oh, I know what I was gonna do. I was gonna jump over here before I squirreled. So if we look at the certifications and we look at CCNP Enterprise, I talked about this in my Friday coaching session. If you look at the exams and the training, and we look at, say, Encore exam detail, and we look at the exam topics, one common question that I get is how far do I take my studies? And that answer could be difficult to answer. So because I am not an expert in automation, what I would do, and I did this the other on Friday, is I would take these topics, for example, and I would say REST API codes and results. Right? So I take this, I'm going to open up this guy here, and I'm going to say Cisco. Oh, I cannot type apparently. Right, so you get this guy right here. So you get this DevNet, and so you click on this URL, and this pops up, and then here's all of your service fulfillment REST API code error codes, and so you're able to go through. Here's a bunch of stuff that would be your error codes. So this would give you a lot of the stuff that you need. Media file. If we go back one here, if we look at HTTP return codes. So 200 OK, and then you've got a bunch of other stuff that you could dig into, general, error response. So this is how I would answer your question. If you were to be looking for specifics on the topic, this is how I would go about doing that. Request response format. So I don't know how valuable this is going to be to some folks, but you could Google your way through some stuff and find quite a bit of information if you're interested in knowing that type of stuff, especially if you're studying for a certification exam. But for example, you could say describe APIs for Cisco DNA, right? So we can grab this and right. So we have Platform API Catalyst Center. And we click on this, and we can see what the different platform overview for the API looks like, and read through some of this. So it would help you go through some of the details of what's going on here. Now, are you going to get questions on this? Maybe. I don't know. But it would at least give you an idea of what you're looking at. And then if you look at security, for example, if you don't know what MACsec is, first come back over here to this guy and open up this guy and paste it in MACsec. We'll say Cisco because we're looking at Cisco hardware. Configuring MACsec encryption. So here's a PDF for it. I would go to understanding MACsec encryption. It's going to take you to system security for iOS XR. Does it really matter what platform you're on? Not really. Not too much anyway. It's going to talk about what MACsec is and how it works, what the process is, and it's layer 2 encryption, right? So if you got a layer 2 connection between two devices, this is how you encrypt it. So this would walk you through how to do that. Don't let Cisco Live be a determining factor either. So let's go up here to CiscoLive.com. And we're going to go look at, we're going to go search sessions. This is free, by the way. All you have to do is register. Click here for a create account. So we're going to come in here and type in MacSec. So here we go. We have MacSec. Let's 2024 Amsterdam. So learning DCN, data center network solutions, real world case studies, VXLAN, EVPN multi-site with Nexus Dashboard Fabric Controller, Data Broker, and Security, MacSec, CloudSec. So if we were to click on this guy, there's a session presentation. It's probably not going to let me download it, or maybe it will. Yeah, it's going to make me log in, but don't try emailing that website. That email that no longer works. So you have to log in to get the presentation, but it would walk you through how that type of stuff would win, or how that stuff would work, and that type of stuff. So that's where I would begin. Then you go back to all view all sessions. Let's see if there's anything else in here. It may not be a bad. I probably wouldn't do iOS XR. Let me come over here to this guy right here. Let's go to routers, and then we're gonna look at the Cat 8 series. We're gonna look at configuration, and we're gonna look at documentation of this type. Is this all XR? Yeah, it's all XR. I'm sorry. I want to look at routers. We're going to look at let's look at switches. Product support. Switches. We're going to look at, let's say, Nexus 9K. Nexus 9000 series switches. We're going to look at documentation, and we're going to look at, where's the configuration? No, they don't have it listed out. Data sheets, end of life announcements. Do they not have config guides? That's command reference. Oh, that's it. That's all they have for it, huh? Well, that's a bummer. So I guess you'd have to do the old-fashioned Google for it. So Cisco Catalyst MacSec. That'll work. So does that take me to? So this is going to be the community. If you wanted to look through specific config, actually I might be able to find it back over here. If I go to product switches, we go to switches, and we go to, say, the Cat 9K, Cat 9200, and we look at the configure. There we go. I don't know why it's not showing me what I want to see, but if we look at the software configuration for 17.8 for 9200. Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. The config guides are a little clunky here. Let's go to, that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, my bad. I have to go back a little further in the world. I don't know why it does that, but it does. Let's look at the 9300. See if that's any better. Configuration. So we'll look at software configuration for this guy. Same thing, huh? That's cute. I might have to go to products and services. No, I want to go to support. I want to go to view all products. And I want to look at iOS. I don't want to look at the platform. I want to look at the operating system. So it's XE17. So we'll grab 17.9 Cupertino, and we want to look at configuration. So let's see here. What would I don't know why it pulls me back into here. Stable firewall. So I do have a cheat sheet for this. Let me pull up the CSR docs. This will be a cheat sheet. I have this bookmarked just because I don't want to deal with. And if I scroll all the way down, so if I look up Mac sec, here we go. 16.6. And then I look at this guy right here. Then it's going to walk me through what to do. This is on iOS XE software, but it's going to show me how to configure it and how it works and all that type of stuff. So if you need to dig into it, is it straightforward? No, it's not, unfortunately. To find the documentation. Here I am. I know how to navigate Cisco's website. So, and you saw how much I struggled to find it. So hopefully you won't have as much trouble. But if we go back up to the top here and we look at the chapter configuration and we look at configuring the MKA, which is the MACsec key agreement, and then we look through all the details of the config, it doesn't look like it's terribly difficult to configure. You just have to have supported hardware to do it. So, all right, folks, it's at the top of the hour, 8:02. So if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback, you can always drop that in the comment section below. I'm about to wrap it up for this evening, considering we talked a lot about a lot of different topics. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. I will see all of you on Friday that are going to show up for the members only chat, the coaching session. So if you guys want to show up for that, awesome. Until that, unless there's something else you guys have, I will catch all of you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. So y'all have a good evening. Enjoy your rest of your week. Stay safe out there, and we'll catch you next time. Have a good night, everyone.